realized that you've been the one doing the adjusting? You're the one rearranging your schedule, lowering your expectations, explaining away silence, carrying the weight of commitment while calling it understanding. And you told yourself this is just what loyalty looks like. But at some point, loyalty stopped feeling noble and it started feeling heavy. Not because loyalty is wrong, but because it was one-sided. If you've ever been inconvenienced for the sake of loyalty, this conversation is for you. Pull up a chair, the table is set. Welcome to the I Lead Misty Blue podcast. I'm Misty Green, and today we're talking about the difference between faithful devotion and self-betrayal disguised as loyalty. Loyalty is one of the most celebrated virtues. We praise it in friendships, we honor it in relationships, we expect it in leadership, and we preach it in faith. But loyalty becomes dangerous when it demands your silence, your shrinking, the bending of your spine, or your suffering to survive. You know you're there when you hesitate to speak because you don't want to, quote unquote, rock the boat. You keep making exceptions for behavior that never improves. You stay committed to people who are no longer committed to you. You call neglect seasons. You call inconsistency busyness. You even call emotional absence misunderstanding. And slowly loyalty becomes a place where you are the only one being inconvenienced emotionally, spiritually, and relationally. Loyalty was never meant to cost you your dignity. Scripture honors loyalty, but never at the expense of truth. See, Ruth was loyal, but Boaz met her with provision. David, he was loyal, but Jonathan risked himself for David. Jesus was faithful, but he walked away from crowds who wanted access without transformation. Biblical loyalty, it's mutual, it's anchored, and it's life-giving. Misplaced loyalty looks like staying because you're afraid of abandoning someone who already abandoned the work, remaining available to people who never choose you intentionally, and carrying covenants that God never asked you to maintain alone. See, God never calls you to be loyal to what he is actively trying to release you from. If your loyalty requires you to ignore red flags, suppress your discernment, or abandon peace, that isn't faithfulness. That's fear wearing a holy mask. There's another layer we have to name. Disloyal people often assume disloyalty in others, not because it's true, but because integrity defines perception. People can only trust others to the level of integrity they live by. If someone cuts corners, they assume everyone does. If someone plays angles, they expect manipulation in return. If someone lacks honesty, they stay alert for dishonesty everywhere, not because they're discerning, but because they're projecting. Here's the analogy. A cracked mirror can't reflect clearly. It distorts whatever stands in front of it. And many people are trying to evaluate relationships through mirrors they've never repaired. So instead of asking, how can I grow? They ask, what's wrong with you? Instead of tending to their own character, they scan others for flaws. And in our current culture, accountability is avoided, but suspicion is celebrated. We live in a society where loyalty is questioned more than practiced, where integrity is demanded more than developed, and trust is expected instantly, but built slowly, if at all. See, discernment and suspicion are not the same thing. Discernment is rooted in truth. Suspicion is rooted in fear. And fear cannot build connection. This is where loyal people struggle. You operate honestly. You say what you mean. Your yes is your yes and your no is your no. You don't move with hidden agendas. So when someone treats you as if you do, it's disorienting. You wonder, why don't they believe me? Why are they guarded? Why do they question my heart? But often it isn't about you, it's about the level of integrity they're living at. You cannot convince someone of sincerity if sincerity isn't something they practice. People measure others using the ruler they live by, and if their ruler is bent, everything looks crooked. That's not rejection, baby, that's clarity. Often the most loyal people are also the most capable. They're dependable, emotionally aware, they're patient, and you know what? They are grace filled. So people, they'll lean on those kind of people, and eventually they'll lean away from responsibility. And because you can handle it as a loyal person, you do, until you realize you've been loyal to the point of complete depletion. Being strong does not mean being endlessly available. Being loving, it doesn't mean being endlessly accommodating. Being faithful does not mean staying where reciprocity has died or even never existed. Sometimes the bravest act of loyalty is to yourself and to the God who entrusted you with your life. There comes a moment when inconvenience gets loud. Your peace protests, your body holds the tension, your spirit feels unsettled. See, that isn't rebellion, that's discernment. God often uses inconvenience to expose misalignment. What once felt noble now feels draining. What once felt patient now feels so very stuck. And what once felt loving now feels excruciatingly lonely. Sometimes inconvenience isn't punishment, it's permission. Permission to stop carrying what isn't yours and permission to choose alignment over obligation. Healthy loyalty looks like mutual effort, shared responsibility, respect for boundaries, peace even in the midst of misunderstanding. Anything else isn't loyalty, it's endurance without fruit. You're allowed to say, I've been loyal, but I also need reciprocity. I can love without sacrificing myself, and I honor what was, but I won't live stuck in what no longer is. That isn't cold, that's wisdom. If you've been inconvenienced for the sake of loyalty, I want you to know this gently. You weren't wrong for loving deeply. You weren't foolish for hoping. You weren't weak for staying as long as you did. Your loyalty was real, your heart was sincere, and your intentions were clean. But loyalty was never meant to become a place where you abandon yourself. Sometimes the most sacred form of faithfulness is choosing peace, choosing truth, choosing alignment. It's allowing yourself to rest in relationships that don't require performance or proof or endurance just to be seen. Let this be your permission to soften your grip on what feels heavy and trust that what is meant for you will meet you with the same integrity that you bring to the table. You don't have to disappear to be loyal. You don't have to suffer to be faithful, and you don't have to carry what was never yours alone. Baby, exhale. You're allowed to choose what chooses you.